Welcome back to another edition of Where in the World is Computers Are Bad. This time the answer is southbound on the east frontage road of Interstate 25, just south of Socorro, New Mexico. We're passing the lovely Socorro landfill now. I am on the way out this frontage road to the Socorro L-3I main station. The Socorro L-3I main station, if you are not familiar, was a power feed station on the L-3I hardened transcontinental military telephone cable. It was one of the larger main stations because it featured not only an AUTOVON tandem switch, but also an alternate network control center originally for the AUTOVON network. Today it is largely disused, although CenturyLink now still maintains it, and they have a little bit of equipment like cell phone. I think it's actually just a cell phone repeater, as well as a what would you call it? A base station for their mobile radio system for their maintenance trucks located there. But that's pretty much it. Otherwise, the site is pretty much in cold storage. So here we are at the Socorro L-3I main station, coming down the main access road to it. Notice that large cap. Oh, what's that? I'm guessing it's related to the old sewage system, as is maybe the pit to our right. When these were built, most of them were built in very rural areas, and there wasn't really public infrastructure to speak of. So, you know, and on top of that, nuclear war survivability was a concern. So they tend to have fully independent water wells and sewage treatment on site. There are photographs that I took of this site maybe 5 years ago on my website that sometimes get passed around as good photos of this site. A couple of things have changed since I took those photos. Number one, the horn antennas have been removed from the tower. I think that happened around 4 years ago. Number two, more recently, I would wager in the last year, because at least I have not noticed it before today, they repainted. It didn't all used to be this drab green. It used to be a combination of blue and off-white. Might have to check my photos there. What is there to see at this site? Well, the first thing that I like to point out are these signs. Willful or malicious destruction of or injury to communications facilities used or intended for use for military or civil defense functions is a violation of the laws of the United States. It's a long sign, huh? Typical of all of the AT&T sites that were built as defense projects in the 1960s time period. It's sort of funny that this front gate actually has two different versions of that sign. I think last time I was here, that normal business hours sign was legible too. That's taken some wear over the years. But it's been a long time, I think, since this site has been regularly staffed. I know there's a technician that attends to this site now just to do basic maintenance, and I think they use it for some storage, but it's not really active in any way anymore. Let's take a look at some features that are visible here on the surface. You can see these two large radiators for generator cooling. I don't think these are original. I'm not 100% sure, but I think these were added after the site was originally built, but during the time period when the site was still operational. Obviously, they don't look as hardened as the rest of the facility, although I imagine they might have been rated for the same, you know, blast overpressure that the antennas, the horn antennas on the tower were. And if we look just to the left, so kind of a metal canister on top of a concrete cylinder. That is actually the blast detector. That's not an optical type, that's a gamma radiation type, I believe. So it detects a sudden pulse of gamma radiation, and that triggers some automatic protective actions, namely the closure of blast dampers on the ventilation for the site. The ventilation for the site, there's a couple of different vent sets, but one of them is here in front of the those radiators or those chillers. There are grates that just go down into shafts, down to the underground level there, but they have these low concrete walls around them. Those low concrete walls are blast deflectors, so they would have minimized the extent to which, a shock wave would have gone down those shafts and reached the actual vent dampers of the facility. The building just to the right, that's kind of right behind the warning signs, it's got a bay door, it's got a man door to the right. That's definitely original. Basically all of the Western L-3I main sites have a building that looks exactly like that one. The other structures on this side I'm not so sure about. There's like a 4-bay garage building over there. That's pretty typical. A lot of the Western L-3I sites have one. This site actually has 2 garage structures like that. I think one of them might be original, probably the one that has the bay doors facing us, and I think the other is not original. I'm not 100% sure of that. That's my guess. This also has this shed outside of it, which kind of looks like one of the repeater huts, but it is, I think, a different design. I don't think they had that corrugated metal siding, but I might have to check my photos to be sure. I have no idea what's up with this hut. The theory I've heard is that it was added when this right-of-way was upgraded to fiber going west from Socorro. The thing is, I don't think that fiber line actually passes through this site. I can't find any right-of-way markers that say fiber optic, and I have found right-of-way markers that say fiber optic linking to a route that goes north towards Albuquerque that does not pass by here. The closest it comes is probably 10 miles northeast of this point. So really not sure about that shed. The fact that it's outside of the fence is conspicuous. Also that it's got that like combo padlock on it makes me think that that might be to allow non-AT&T employees to access something, maybe technicians from a cellular carrier or whatever. I'm saying AT&T too, of course, that's CenturyLink now in this territory that owns and operates this facility. I just walked around the fence line of the facility to the east side. We're not far from where we were before, but there's a couple more things that we can see here. One is that they're storing some utility poles here. Those aren't original, of course. But right where we're standing is right next to this marker, water well number 1. As I said, each of these were built with their own independent water and sewage systems. And of course, they had generators on site. This allowed them to operate, independently of outside utility support for some period of time. Kind of right in the middle of your view right now is the original kind of surface level entrance building for the facility. And if we look off to the right, we can see another of the air vents to the underground facility. It has this low wall that serves as a blast deflector, and those stacks were the exhaust from the generators. In the older L-3I main stations, the generators were Solar diesel turbines. That name is confusing, I know. Solar was a company which manufactured the turbines. What I've read, I don't know that I have seen solid evidence of this, but I've seen anecdotes that there were reliability and maintenance problems with those turbines, which is why the facilities that were built later, which is generally these ones out west because the system was broadly built from east to west, don't use the turbines anymore. They had reciprocating engines. I don't remember who manufactured those. Kind of in the corner within the fence here, we have like a couple of cleanouts. We have a cover panel that does say electric. Originally, these had their own sewage via, I think, actually a settling pond on the surface, which might be, I believe is kind of over there near where my car is parked. But this site might still be on septic. It might have also actually been connected up to the city sewer system, which I believe does actually extend this far south for other reasons. So I'm not totally sure there. In any case, I'm guessing that's probably a pump that's related to dewatering or sewer. I'm gonna keep kind of walking the perimeter here, somewhat gingerly on account of cactus and the potential of rattlesnakes. Continuing our walk around, we're at the electrical service entrance to the site. It's kind of interesting that this utility pole has this concrete pedestal with a couple of conduits sticking out here. I'm thinking maybe the electrical service originally went underground from this point, and then maybe that was changed at some point. Not sure why, just kind of guessing. We can see the vent set, the eastern vent set here as well. And we're getting a little closer to the tower that originally supported the microwave antennas. We're going to keep walking around that direction. At the northeast corner of the site, there's a couple of things to see. Number one, I'm sorry, the southeast corner actually. Number one, though, we found water well number 2, although the marker has come clean out of the ground. We've also got a smaller marker here. It says benchmark elevation 4135.89. Not sure how much I trust that number now that it's sideways. Right here we can see, I'm not totally sure, but I think this was maybe originally a vent structure, which then had a hatch added for hoisting equipment in and out. Not really sure, but that is some type of opening to the underground facility. Concrete pad of honestly unknown purpose, and behind it, we can see a gamma radiation detector, which was used to trigger defensive measures. The tower that supported the microwave antennas here is kind of interesting. You know, the tower itself is the typical design. The horns are now gone, but you can see there's that sector antenna there that I believe is for either a cellular station, or I've been told before it's actually just like a dumb repeater. And then there's that big antenna up there, which I believe is just a base station for their land mobile radios they use in the CenturyLink service vehicles around here. What's not so normal about it is that you can see the guards for the waveguides coming down, and then the structure that's normally referred to as an ice bridge that protected the waveguides. But it's sitting at ground level essentially, and then it just ends, and it ends where the waveguides and coaxial cables made the turn and disappeared into the ground, since all of the equipment here was located below grade in the underground structure. That structure is not very deep underground. It was built cut and cover, so it's really, I think the roof of it is only a few feet below the grade level here. But what we see at the surface here are really just kind of support buildings, some storage buildings built after the fact, and of course the vents and those chiller units. One useful bit of telecom archaeology that you can always do when you're, on the ground at a site is look for right-of-way markers and see what they tell you. We've got this orange fiberglass paddleboard. These are all kind of newer. It says fiber optics. That tells us it's newer as well. Probably post-80s on account of the fiber optics. I don't really know when those fiberglass paddleboards started becoming common, but I don't think it was very long ago. Just considering when it seems like, the Forest Service and the BLM switched over to the fiberglass paddles from the wooden posts they used to use, which you can still find plenty of out in this part of the country. But I'm walking over here because coming north from the L-3I station, you can see some of these telephone pedestals, which of course hint at copper. Well, look at that. So this might be a little blend of an old and new, right? It says fiber optics. It also says underground telephone cable, which tends to mean, a cable bundle of copper pairs. And I'm gonna brave the cactus just to go over and take a look at this pedestal and see what that says. Underground cable, it also says before digging, call telephone company repair service. That tends to be older pedestals. The newer ones give the 1-800 call before you dig number. And there's actually a line of these. There's probably 3 or 4 of them between here and the fence line of the facility, which is kind of odd because that's not a very long distance. So I'm just not sure why there would be so many pedestals in the path. I'd be interested to hear if anyone has any ideas there. We'll just continue our walking tour to the other side of the road because there is an absolutely demolished pedestal over here. Now, the thing about copper phone lines is that they can often keep working after a surprising amount of abuse, but yeah, I think this got run over, and it kind of makes me think that there are not lines that are in use through here anymore. The thing is, I don't want to dig in there too much on account of hantavirus, and maybe that's just my excuse for my profound arachnophobia, but I don't actually see a cable in there. Right, I see bits of the plastic bracket that would have held up the splice, but I don't see a cable. So I'm not sure what to make of that. It may be. So I don't know. I don't know this for sure, but it's logical, I think, to assume that maybe later on there was connectivity between this L-3I main station and the town telephone exchange in Socorro, which is like a block off the plaza north of here, maybe 10 miles. And so, you know, this is probably the route that would take. And there are indications, like I think loading coil cases of an analog phone line along the frontage road. It may be that line was replaced with fiber, and maybe it was pretty much chopped off at ground level along here, is why we don't see a cable in that pedestal, and why the fiber optic sign has been added to those paddle boards. I'm just not sure. There's a certain amount of guesswork involved here, at least until CenturyLink wants to spill the beans, but they're never particularly helpful in that regard. So here's another as I drive away addendum. I'm going back north now on the frontage road from the site. This frontage road, by the way, it really ends at that L-3I site. I'm not sure if it was originally built for access to it. There's also a gravel road that takes off to a rock quarry that may predate the L-3I site. But the point is, those of you who are astute readers on this topic might remember me saying or reading elsewhere that calling that the Socorro site is not entirely accurate. AT&T is not totally consistent themselves, but the Socorro site is actually just a microwave repeater that's north of Socorro by about 10 miles away from here. The L-3I main station is labeled on AT&T maps either as Socorro number 2 or as Luis Lopez, depending on which map you look at. And I thought I would just point out that as we drive up this frontage road, there's this bridge over the freeway off to our right. And that takes you to Luis Lopez, which is a little census-designated place that's south of Socorro between the freeway and Rio Grande. I actually see a train going by over there right now. This is a pretty good area for rail fanning. So, Luis Lopez is a small place, but I think it was really just a solution to a practical problem for AT&T. They built a main station that was functionally at Socorro. The name Socorro was already taken, so they named it after the next thing that was nearby, and that was Luis Lopez. But then sometimes they called it Socorro number 2. Now, I just wanted to illustrate what I meant when I said that there's a loading coil case or something like that, or that I should say there are multiple of them on the frontage road north. This is it. Now, I'm not super sure of this, so if you know better than I do, please correct me, but I don't think that this is a splice enclosure, and I don't think it's like a T1 repeater or any of the things that you usually see in pressurized cases like this. I think this is an old loading coil bundle, which would indicate a long distance analog pair. I don't think these are in use anywhere anymore. They destroyed DSL. And I would guess this isn't in use anymore. I think it's still just here. You can see it's got a newer interface box below it, which might be modern splices. There's a pedestal, which based on the sticker is of the same vintage. Another quick addendum for you, as long as I'm not blocking traffic. You might remember, I think I mentioned at some point on the blog, the Lonnie Zamora UFO incident. Well, it happened pretty much here, off that direction. This berm was built up as a flood control measure. It didn't used to be here. And I think I'm pretty much parked in the same spot, within maybe hundreds of feet of it, of where Lonnie Zamora was when he saw the famous UFO. When this spillover dam was installed, someone made this lovely mural that recounts the story.